Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, we're going to react to 10 notorious criminals that are being released from prison very soon. I mean, there's just too many of these people to even keep a tally of. So many of them never reached, the public domain, or at least they're not really mentioned a lot because I guess the media doesn't want to create copycats of these people. People are going to, look at some of them and think, oh, let me try and get some of that notoriety, So, but yeah, it's always good to kind of know who they are so you can kind of, if you see them, you can just run in the other direction.
Pickton should not walk on this earth. He doesn't deserve to take one step out of where he is.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at the most infamous criminals who will soon be released from prison or eligible for parole.
There was never an intentional to kill Salena.
Yakiarov, a former mercenary and war criminal. Yakiarov was convicted in 1999 for his role in the ruthless murder of 2 police officers. Working with a group of other men, Arklov embarked on a robbery spree across the Swedish province of Östergötland. On May 28, 1999, the group robbed a bank in Kiches, Sweden. As they made off with millions in stolen money, 2 police officers spotted their vehicle and pursued them. Gunfire erupted, and the police officers were killed. Originally sentenced to life in prison for his participation in the killings, Arklov may be free as soon as 2026 due to a controversial ruling that commuted his sentence to 41 years. The prosecution has filed an appeal on this decision. Elena Kiches in
41 years. So he served 41 years, has he? Wow, that's a long time. I'm not saying he should be released or anything like that, but just to think of serving that amount of time in prison. Crazy amount of time.
2002, Elena Kiches murdered her husband following an argument about money.
The story was that she didn't know where he was. Gee, dear Boris is probably off to Moscow.
But Elena did say she'd had a fight with Boris just before their trip to Disney World.
She admitted the fact that they were, they were speaking about divorce.
Boris Kiches, a wealthy businessman who made his fortune in jet fuel, threatened to leave Elena in financial ruin after he discovered her ongoing affair with a man named Messiah Justice. Following the dispute, Elena murdered Boris in the basement of their lavish Staten Island home. After killing her husband, Elena took her children to Disney World, telling them that their father had left.
And the whole family was supposed to go for the pinnacle of American vacations, a week at Disney World. Only Boris didn't join them.
Sentenced to 22 years to life, Elena Kiches will go before parole commissioners in 2024 in a bid to secure
look at
her.
those eyes, man. She looks like just dead behind the eyes, The light is just gone.
Freedom.
I was like in a dream. Guilt.
Michael Taylor. In 1990, Vietnam veteran James Zapolordi was murdered in a heinous hate crime. The perpetrator, Michael Taylor, set out with an accomplice intending to rob Zapolordi.
When 2 men from Staten Island, Michael Taylor and Philip Sarlo, brutally murdered my brother Jimmy, not for money, not for revenge, but out of prejudice and hatred.
Instead, Taylor killed him. Afterward, the 2 men attempted to rob Zapolordi's home using his keys. The crime was the first case ever in Staten Island to be officially ruled a hate crime based on sexual orientation.
Not just a local news story. It really made national news for a couple of years.
The pair had harassed Zapolordi in the past and had previously spent time in jail for physically assaulting another man. Taylor is currently serving 23 years to life in prison for the murder and is scheduled for a parole hearing in May 2024.
Wow.
Robert Pickton.
2 months
Notorious
from now.
Canadian serial killer Robert Pickton shocked the country with his crimes.
But as he was led away in handcuffs...
But I suppose if you have a parole hearing, it's not guaranteed that you'll be granted parole, is it? So it's not to say he will be released.
Would have expected that those rumours would lead to something far more grave. The eccentric, scruffy farmer being labelled as one of the deadliest serial killers in history.
Also known as the pig farmer killer, Pickton was convicted in 2007 for murdering 6 women. An extensive investigation revealed evidence of additional murders, and it's believed he began killing in the early 1990s, not long after inheriting his family's Port Coquitlam pig farm.
Reports that people were disappearing on his small holding, but when the police went there, what could they find? Pigs, meat, nothing.
He was sentenced to life in prison, but under Canadian law, he would become eligible for parole after 25 years. As of February 2024, Pickton is able to seek day parole.
Families say they are sick to their stomachs, thinking he would be able to apply for day parole.
Anybody who did what he did does not deserve to walk the streets again.
However, no hearing has yet been set. Patrick Goodman.
You got to feel so bad for the families of the victims, you know, to think that because they lost someone forever, like even if the person served 25 years, like they're able to, if they are granted parole, be free again. That person that they killed is dead forever. So is it fair? Is it fair?
In 2002, Patrick Goodman was convicted of killing his girlfriend's son in San Francisco. The brutality and senselessness of the murder shocked investigators and the prosecution, who vowed to put Goodman behind bars and keep him there.
We have to be advocates for public safety, and we have to make sure that people, serve the time that they were sentenced to, but then also that when it's time for them to integrate back into the public, that they are ready to do so.
He was convicted and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Despite protest from the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, Goodman was granted parole in December 2023. He is currently awaiting a mandatory review of the parole board's decision. Unless California Governor Gavin Newsom chooses to exercise his authority to overturn the parole decision, Goodman will be officially released in April 2024.
Overturning such decisions is not unheard of. The governor did that 8 times last year and 21 times the year before.
Edmund Kemper, standing at an imposing 6 foot 9 inches tall. Edmund Kemper looms large as one of America's most...
He was in a show, was it called American Psycho or something like that? It was a Netflix show, really good show.
Notorious serial killers.
No matter how he appeared outwardly, he is the definition of violence and evil.
Wow.
You pray nobody else is out there like that again.
Convicted in 1973 for the murders of 8 people, Kemper has been in prison for over 50 years. Before his infamous killing spree,
50.
Kemper was convicted of slaying his paternal grandparents.
And then a month later, I'm up living with my grandparents in the mountains, and 10 months later, I murdered them.
He became eligible for parole in 1979, and several parole requests have been denied over the years.
The jury declared Edmund Kemper sane and found him guilty of first-degree murder on all 8 counts. He was given 7 years to life on each count, and the terms are being served concurrently.
He was most recently denied parole in 2017 and will again be eligible to seek a hearing with the parole board in 2024. Susan Smith. In 1994, Susan Smith gained national notoriety after she claimed that her 2 children had been kidnapped during a carjacking.
Susan appeared with her husband David to make a tearful plea for the return of their children.
I can't sleep, I can't eat, I can't do anything but think about them.
When Smith appeared on the news begging for the return of her children, no one suspected the demure, glasses-wearing South Carolina mom was capable of murder.
Man.
However, police grew suspicious of her, and eventually, her story began to unravel.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder.
Smith was arrested and subsequently confessed to killing her sons.
Talk about a wolf in sheep's clothing, eh? You can never judge a book by its cover. I would have never thought.
In 1995 to life in prison, Smith will be eligible to seek parole for the first time in November 2024.
Here, the murder mom is up for parole, but her family is not offering much support, saying they're not interested in helping her. And her ex-husband, David, says he plans to file an affidavit urging the parole board to keep her locked up.
I mean, why would her family help her? Like, she literally took their grandkids away, you know.
Yolanda Saldivar. In 1995, rising star Salena Quintanilla was murdered by the president of her fan club, Yolanda Saldivar.
34-year-old Yolanda Saldivar was arrested late yesterday after a 9-hour standoff with police. Crowds cheered as Selena's alleged killer gave herself up to authorities. She's accused of shooting Selena once in the back with a .38 caliber revolver.
In the mid-1990s, Salena was a Tejano music sensation who was poised to break into mainstream pop success. Salena's family discovered that Saldivar had embezzled a significant sum of money from the songstress.
There was money missing everywhere. Mr. Quintanilla brought all the evidence he had discovered. He brought all these checks and asked Yolanda point blank, "How do you explain this?" Yolanda had no explanation, none whatsoever.
Salena met with Saldivar on the morning of March 31st, 1995, to collect a few financial documents. By some accounts, Salena also intended to fire Saldivar at that time. An argument ensued and Saldivar pulled a gun on Salena.
She was angry. She was losing everything. She was angry with Mr. Quintanilla for what he had done. She was going to lose the life that she knew. She was going to go back to being nobody, and this was not going to happen. If she was going down, everybody was going down.
Sentenced to life in prison in 1995, Saldivar will become eligible for parole in March 2025. Mark David Chapman.
What crazy behavior. So rather than potentially go to prison for, a few years, maybe, for, I don't know, fraud, I guess, theft by fraud or something like that. Now she's in prison for decades. It's just, I guess it was a moment of madness on her behalf, really. But still, just a dumb, evil thing to do, right?
December 8th, 1980, the news of John Lennon's death reverberated around the world.
John Lennon, outside of his apartment building on the west side of New York City, the most famous perhaps of all of the Beatles, shot twice in the back, rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, dead on arrival.
Fans of the legendary Beatles musician were horrified to learn he'd been killed by an obsessed fan named Mark David Chapman. An unremarkable man with no prior criminal convictions, Chapman was in a deteriorating mental state and drinking heavily before the killing.
He said, "Is that all? Do you want anything else?" And I felt then and now that he knew something subconsciously, that he was looking into the eyes of the person that was going to kill him.
On the evening of the murder, Chapman waited outside Lennon's apartment building and shot the unsuspecting singer as he returned home. He was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison.
Why?
Chapman was also ordered to undergo psychiatric treatment. He's been denied parole 12 times.
I'm here today to call on the New York State Parole Board to deny the release of Mark Chapman.
In 2024, he will make his 13th appearance before the parole board. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
Why should you be granted parole? I mean,
and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Anthony Center and Joseph Testa. During the 1970s and 80s, the Gemini Twins were two of the most merciless hitmen in the world of New York organized crime.
Other crew members included Joey Testa and Anthony Center, who were so close they were nicknamed the Twins.
Anthony Center and Joseph Testa were childhood friends who earned their unusual nickname because they primarily operated out of the Gemini Lounge in Brooklyn and always worked together.
The gang used to hang out at a bar here on Flatlands Avenue, Brooklyn. Today, it is a church, but at the time, it was called the Gemini Lounge and was the DeMeo gang's clubhouse and base for operations.
They gained
the DeMeo gang. The Sopranos used to be called the DeMeos before Tony became the boss. That's for any of you Sopranos fans out there. Great show.
A reputation for how ruthless and efficient they were at making people disappear. In 1989, Center and Testa were convicted on 10 counts of murder and racketeering.
It was not some case that was built overnight, done in a week. It was years of investigating.
Both were sentenced to life in prison. In 2022, to the dismay of his victims' loved ones, Center was granted parole. He was sent to a halfway house in December 2023, while Testa is set to get out per USPC orders in April 2024. Are there more notorious criminals about to be released back into society? Let us know who we should have included on our list.
Smith is now serving a life sentence at Leith Correctional in Greenwood and is eligible for parole, believe it or not, in 2024.
It really makes me think, what constitutes someone being granted parole? Like, is it if they display consistent remorse for what they did, if they can display rehabilitation? But even if they can, like, if you have murdered someone, you know, that person is gone forever. So you could argue that by you being released, you still have, you know, in some way, like, because some people will argue it should be you know, you took a life, your life should be in prison now. It's a really, really tough one. Like, because on the one hand, you know, rehabilitation should be a thing. Like, if someone can be rehabilitated, why shouldn't they be released back into the general population? But on the other hand, you got to feel for the families of the victims because they've lost their loved one forever and ever. It's a really tricky balancing act. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.